used to think that white roses meant purity, that they symbolized new beginnings, fresh starts, the kind of love that erases all the pain that came before. Standing here now, surrounded by thousands of them cascading from the cathedral ceiling, like fallen snow, I realize how naive I was. White roses don't mean purity. They mean surrender. They mean giving up the fight before it even begins. The organ music swells around me, each note vibrating through the marble floors and up into my chest, but all I can hear is the sound of my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. 200 guests rise to their feet as the doors open, their faces turning toward me like sunflowers following the sun. But I'm not looking at them. I'm looking at him, at the altar, at the man I thought I knew. He's standing there in his charcoal suit, the one we picked out together 3 months ago at that boutique downtown where the saleswoman kept calling us the perfect couple. His hands are clasped in front of him, and from this distance, he looks exactly like the man who proposed to me on a beach in Santorini, who whispered promises about forever, while the sun set behind us like a painting. But something is wrong. Something has been wrong for weeks now, and I've been too afraid to name it. His eyes should be on me. This is our moment, our wedding day, the culmination of 3 years together, and all the healing we've done since we found each other. But his gaze keeps drifting to the left, to the front pew where she sits, where she always sits now. His brother's widow, the woman who moved in with us 6 months ago, because she had nowhere else to go after the accident. The woman who cries herself to sleep every night in the guest room next to ours, her sobs seeping through the thin walls like poison. I take my first step down the aisle, and my father's arm tightens around mine. He must feel me trembling. The silk of my dress whispers against the stone floor, each step echoing in the vast space like a countdown. 10 more steps until I reach him. 9, 8. But with each step, his attention drifts further away from me, pulled like a magnet toward her dark hair, her pale hands folded in her lap, the way she's staring down at her wedding ring, his brother's ring, like it holds all the answers to questions no one is brave enough to ask. 7 steps. 6. The photographer moves silently along the side of the aisle, capturing what should be the most beautiful moment of my life. But all I can think about is last Tuesday night when I came home early from work and found them in the kitchen together. They weren't touching. They weren't even talking. But there was something in the air between them, thick and electric and wrong. She was making tea, the way she always does when she can't sleep, and he was just standing there watching her move around our kitchen like she belonged there more than I did. When they saw me in the doorway, they jumped apart even though they weren't together. And that's when I knew. You don't jump apart from someone unless you've been close in ways that matter. You don't look guilty unless you have something to feel guilty about. 5 steps. 4. My bouquet is shaking in my hands, white roses and baby's breath that suddenly feel like they weigh 1,000 pounds. The florist had suggested red roses, said they would be more dramatic against my dress, but I wanted white. I wanted pure. I wanted to believe that this love could wash away all the dirt and disappointment that came before. I wanted to believe that I could be someone's first choice for once in my life. 3 steps. 2. My father squeezes my hand one last time before he lifts my veil and kisses my cheek. His eyes are bright with tears, and I wonder if he can see what I see. If he notices the way the groom's attention keeps sliding away from his daughter like water off glass. But he's smiling, proud, believing in this fairy tale we've all constructed around ourselves like a fortress of hope. 1 step. I'm here, standing at the altar in front of the man I love, surrounded by everyone we care about, wearing the dress I dreamed about since I was 7 years old. This should be perfect. This should be the moment when everything finally makes sense, when all the broken pieces of my heart finally click into place and form something whole and beautiful. But he's not looking at me. Even now. even as I stand here offering him everything I am and everything I will ever be. His eyes drift past me to her, to the woman in the front row who's supposed to be mourning his brother, but who's staring at him like he's the only person in this room who matters. And maybe, I realize with a clarity that cuts through me like ice, he is. The officiant begins to speak, his voice warm and familiar. He's known our family for years. Baptized me when I was 3 months old, confirmed me when I was 14, and now he's supposed to marry me to the love of my life. But as he talks about the sacred bond between two people, about choosing each other every single day, about forsaking all others, I watch my groom's face and see the exact moment he makes his choice. It's subtle, so subtle that no one else would notice. A slight tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible shift in his posture. The way his breathing changes, becomes more shallow, more careful. He looks at her one more time, just for a second, but a second is enough. In that glance, I see everything, the longing, the guilt, the love he's been trying to hide from himself and everyone else. The love that was never meant for me. The words of the ceremony wash over me like white noise. Something about love being patient, love being kind, love not being envious or boastful. But all I can think about is how patient I've been, how kind, how I've never been envious of anyone in his life until she showed up, broken and beautiful, and needing to be saved. How I've never boasted, never demanded, never asked for more than whatever scraps of attention he was willing to give me. And it still wasn't enough. The officiant asks him to repeat his vows, and he does, word for word, exactly as we practiced. His voice is steady, clear, carrying across the cathedral like a prayer. He promises to love me, to honor me, to cherish me in sickness and in health, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, until death do us part. But promises are just words, and words are just breath, and breath disappears the moment it leaves your lips. He's saying all the right things to me while his heart beats for someone else. I should feel angry. I should feel betrayed, humiliated, devastated that the man I'm about to marry is emotionally somewhere else entirely. But all I feel is tired. So incredibly tired of fighting for scraps of love, of convincing myself that being chosen by default is the same as being chosen with passion. I'm tired of being the safe choice, the convenient choice, the choice that makes sense on paper, but leaves your soul empty. Now it's my turn to speak, to make promises I'm not sure I can keep to a man who's already broken his before he's even made them. I open my mouth to recite the vows we wrote together. The ones that took us 3 drafts to get right because we kept arguing about whether to include the line about putting each other first. He wanted to change it to putting our relationship first, and I insisted on each other. Now I understand why he fought me on that. You can't put someone first when your heart belongs to someone else. But instead of the carefully crafted words we rehearsed, something else comes out. Something true. I love you. I hear myself saying, but not the vows we practiced, not the pretty promises wrapped in ribbon and hope. Instead, I say what I've been too afraid to say for months now. I love you, but I see where your heart really lies. I love you, but I won't spend my life competing with a ghost. I love you, but love isn't supposed to feel like begging. Love isn't supposed to feel like settling. Love isn't supposed to leave you feeling invisible in your own relationship. The cathedral goes dead silent. 200 people holding their breath, waiting to see what happens next. The photographer lowers his camera. The officiant's mouth falls open slightly, his prepared words forgotten. My father half rises from his seat, confusion and worry creasing his face. But I'm looking at him, at my almost husband, at the man who flinches like I slapped him, because finally, someone has said out loud what everyone has been pretending not to see. His face goes white, then red, then white again. His hands shake as he reaches for me, but I step back. Just one step. But it might as well be a chasm. You're choosing her. I continue, my voice carrying in the terrible silence. You've been choosing her since the day she moved in with us. You choose her every morning when you make her coffee before mine. You choose her every evening when you ask about her day before asking about mine. You choose her every night when you lie awake thinking about ways to make her smile instead of ways to love me better. He tries to deny it, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But we both know I'm right. We've all known. The only question was whether anyone would be brave enough to name it. One choose me, I whisper, and somehow it carries across the entire cathedral like a bell tolling. For the first time in my life, I choose me. I turn away from the altar, away from the man who was supposed to love me more than anyone else in the world, away from the fairy tale that was built on lies and desperation and the willingness to accept crumbs, when what I deserved was the whole feast. My dress trails behind me like a river of silk and sorrow as I walk back down the aisle, past the shocked faces of our friends and family, past the flowers that now look like decorations for a funeral instead of a wedding. But I don't run. I don't cry. I don't collapse in a heap of tulle and broken dreams. I walk. Slowly, deliberately, with my head high and my shoulders straight. Because this isn't the end of my story. This is the beginning of a new chapter. One where I'm the protagonist instead of a supporting character in someone else's drama. Behind me, I hear chaos erupting. Voices raised in confusion and concern. Someone calling my name. Footsteps on marble. But I don't turn around. I push through the heavy doors of the cathedral and step out into the afternoon sunlight where my car is, waiting not the decorated limousine we hired for the reception, but my own little Honda with the dent in the passenger door from when I backed into a mailbox 6 months ago while distracted thinking about him. I drive. I don't know where I'm going, just that I need to move, need to put distance between myself and the wreckage of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. The wedding dress makes it difficult to work the petals, but I manage, pulling the layers of silk and tulle around me like armor made of disappointment and delayed self-respect. The city blurs past my windows, traffic lights and crosswalks, and people going about their normal Saturday afternoons, completely unaware that someone's entire world just imploded a few miles away. I catch glimpses of myself in the rearview mirror, hair still perfect, makeup still intact, looking every inch the radiant bride except for my eyes. My eyes look like someone who just woke up from a very long, very convincing dream. I think about her as I drive, about how she came into our lives like a storm, all grief and gratitude and desperate need. She lost her husband, his brother, in a car accident 6 months ago. And we took her in because what else do you do when someone you care about has nowhere to go? She was supposed to stay for a few weeks, just until she figured out her next steps. But weeks turned into months, and somewhere along the way, she stopped being a house guest and started being the center of gravity, round which our entire lives began to orbit. It wasn't her fault. I want to be clear about that. She never threw herself at him, never flirted. Never tried to steal him away from me. She was just broken. And he's always been drawn to broken things. Always believed he could fix people if he just tried hard enough. It's what drew him to me in the first place. Back when I was a mess of anxiety and abandonment issues, jumping at shadows and convinced that everyone I loved would eventually leave. Ironic, isn't it? The very thing that brought us together is what tore us apart. She needed him in ways I never did. Not anymore. She needed him to hold her while she cried, to listen to her stories about her dead husband, to help her navigate the bureaucratic nightmare of death certificates and insurance, claims, and learning how to be a person again instead of half of a couple. And he needed to be needed. He needed to feel important, essential, like someone's hero. I had gotten too healthy for him, too independent, to hold dots, so he found someone new to save. Someone who would look at him like he hung the moon in the Stars, someone who would depend on him completely because she had no other choice. And I became the third wheel in my own relationship, watching from the sidelines while he fell in love with saving her. The worst part is, I like her. I've always liked her. Before the accident, she and her husband were our friends. We double dated, had dinner parties, spent New Year's Eve together 3 years running. She's funny and kind and smart, and if circumstances were different, we might have been best friends. But instead, we became rivals in a competition I didn't even know I was losing until it was too late. My phone has been buzzing nonstop since I left the cathedral, but I ignore it. I know what the messages say without reading them. Apologies and explanations and desperate attempts to undo what can't be undone. But you can't unsee what I saw. You can't unfeel what I felt standing at that altar, watching the man who was supposed to marry me choose someone else with his eyes, his heart, his very soul. I drive until I reach the coast, until I can smell salt in the air and hear the crash of waves against rocks. There's a little overlook here where we used to come when we first started dating, back when everything was new and possible, and I believed that finding him meant I would never be lonely again. The irony isn't lost on me that I'm ending this relationship in the same place it began, except this time I'm alone. I park the car and sit for a moment, looking out at the endless expanse of ocean. The sun is starting to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that would be romantic if I were here with someone who actually wanted to be with me. Instead, it just looks like an ending. Beautiful. But final. My phone buzzes again. This time I look. It's him. Please come back. We can fix this. I love you. I choose you. But choosing someone out of guilt isn't the same as choosing them out of love. Choosing someone because they call you out isn't the same as choosing them because you can't imagine your life without them. Choosing someone because you're afraid of being alone isn't choosing them at all. I type back. You chose her the moment she walked into our lives. I'm just finally brave enough to see it. Then I turn off my phone and get out of the car. The wedding dress makes walking on the rocky path treacherous, but I manage to make it to the edge of the cliff where a wooden bench sits facing the ocean. Someone carved initials into the back of it. DM. Surrounded by a heart that's weathered and faded, but still visible. I wonder if D and M made it. I wonder if they're still together somewhere, still carving their initials into things, still believing in forever. I sit down and let myself cry for the first time since I walked out of that cathedral. Not the pretty, photogenic tears of a movie heroine, but ugly, messy sobs that come from somewhere deep and raw and real. I cry for the future I thought I was building, for the family we planned to have, for the house we were supposed to buy. Next spring with the garden where I was going to grow tomatoes and herbs. I cry for the version of myself that was so desperate to be loved that she was willing to accept whatever scraps of affection were thrown her way. The version that made excuses and found reasons and convinced herself that being tolerated was the same as being cherished. But mostly, I cry with relief because finally, I am free. The sun disappears behind the horizon while I sit there, and the sky deepens from pink to purple to black. Stars begin to appear, one by one, and I find myself thinking about how long it takes light to travel from those distant suns to reach us here on Earth. Some of the stars I'm looking at might already be dead, their light just now reaching me across the vast emptiness of space. Maybe that's what love is, sometimes the ghost of something that used to exist, still traveling toward us long after the source has burned out. My phone starts buzzing again, even though I turned it off. It must have turned itself back on, the way phones do when they're trying to be helpful. This time, it's not him calling. It's her. I stare at her name on the screen for a long time before I answer. Her voice is small and broken when she speaks. So quiet I have to strain to hear her over the sound of the waves. She's crying, has been crying for hours by the sound of it. She tells me she never meant for any of this to happen. She tells me she tried to leave a dozen times, but he always convinced her to stay. Said she was family now, said they couldn't abandon her when she needed them most. She tells me she's in love with him. It should hurt more than it does, hearing her say it out loud. But instead, I feel something like gratitude. Finally, someone is being honest. Finally, someone is telling the truth about what's been happening in the shadows of my relationship for the past 6 months. She tells me she knows it's wrong. Knows she's betraying her dead husband's memory and ruining my life and destroying everything good she's ever touched. She tells me she never acted on it. Never so much as held his hand or let herself be alone with him in a room for more than a few minutes at a time. But she loves him, and she knows he loves her too. And she doesn't know how to live with that knowledge. She tells me she's leaving tonight. She's already packed her bags and called a taxi. And she's going to disappear from both our lives because it's the only way any of us can be happy. I should let her go. I should hang up the phone and let her sacrifice herself on the altar of what's right and proper and socially acceptable. But something stops me. Maybe it's the way her voice breaks when she talks about leaving. Maybe it's the recognition of someone else who's been living in the shadows, accepting less than what her heart really wants. Or maybe it's just that I'm tired of people making decisions based on what they think they should do instead of what they actually want to do. Where will you go? I ask her. She doesn't know. She has some money saved, enough for a few months in a cheap apartment somewhere far away where no one knows her story. She'll find a job, start over, try to build a life that doesn't revolve around loving someone she can't have. It sounds lonely. I tell her, it sounds like running away. She laughs, but there's no humor in it. What's the alternative? Stay and watch him marry you while knowing we both love him. Watch you pretend to be happy while knowing your husband's heart belongs to someone else. Destroy 3 lives instead of just 2. What if there was another choice? I hear myself asking, what if instead of all of us being miserable, some of us could actually be happy? She goes quiet for so long, I think she's hung up. When she finally speaks, her voice is barely a whisper. What are you saying? I'm saying I already left him. I'm saying the wedding is off and the fairy tale is over and everyone gets to stop pretending. Now, I'm saying you don't have to run away from something that's already ended. I'm saying maybe it's time for all of us to choose what we actually want instead of what we think we're supposed to want. She starts crying again, harder this time. But I think they might be tears of relief instead of grief. She tells me she's sorry over and over, like a prayer or a penance. She never wanted to be the other woman. She never wanted to be the reason someone else's relationship fell apart. But you weren't the other woman, I tell her. I was. I was the other woman in my own relationship, competing with a ghost, with a memory, with the idea of someone who needed him more than I did. She was just the catalyst, the thing that made it impossible to ignore what was already broken. We talk for another hour. 2 women who should hate each other, but who somehow understand each other better than anyone else ever could. We talk about love and loss and the terrible weight of wanting someone you can't have. We talk about the different ways people leave through death, through choice, through the slow erosion of indifference. We talk about what comes next. By the time I hang up the phone, the plan is clear. She's not leaving town. She's not running away. She's going to stay and fight for what she wants, for what they both want, for the love that's been hiding in the shadows for months. And I'm going to let them, not because I'm noble or selfless or too good for this world, but because I finally understand something that took me 32 years to learn. You can't make someone love you. You can't convince them or guilt them or manipulate them into feeling something they don't feel. You can't be so perfect, so understanding, so accommodating that they have no choice but to choose you. Love is a choice, but it's not a rational one. It's not a decision you make with your head based on compatibility and shared goals and who. looks better on paper. It's a feeling that grabs you by the throat and refuses to let go, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's complicated, even when it hurts everyone involved. He never chose me with that kind of love. He chose me because I was safe, because I was available, because I fit into his life without requiring too much rearrangement. He chose me the way you choose a restaurant when you're hungry, but not particular about what you eat it'll do. It's fine. It meets the basic requirements. But he loves her the way you love something you can't live without. The way you love something. That rewrites your entire understanding of what love can be. And I deserve to be loved that way too. I drive back to the city as the clock approaches midnight. Cinderella in reverse. Leaving the ball before my dress turns back into rags. The streets are mostly empty now. Just the occasional taxi or late-night wanderers stumbling home from bars and dates. And lives that continued on while mine was being detonated. I don't go home. I can't. Not yet. Instead, I drive to my sister's apartment, the one with the spare key hidden under the fake rock by the front door. She's asleep when I let myself in, but the sound of the door wakes her up. And she comes stumbling out of her bedroom in an old t-shirt and pajama pants, ready to yell at whoever's breaking into her apartment at this hour. She stops when she sees me standing in her living room in my wedding dress, looking like the ghost of matrimony past. "Oh, honey," she says, and opens her arms. I fall into them and let her hold me while I cry again. Different tears this time. Not the devastated sobs of loss, but the cleansing tears of relief, of freedom, of finally choosing myself. She doesn't ask questions, not right away. She just holds me and strokes my hair and tells me it's going to be okay, even though she doesn't know what happened or why I'm here or what needs to be okay. But that's what sisters do. They show up in the middle of the night when your life falls apart. And they hold you together until you're strong enough to hold yourself. Later, after I've changed out of the wedding dress and into one of her oversized sweatshirts, after I've washed the makeup off my face and told her the whole story, she asks me if I'm okay. It's a complicated question. Am I okay with watching the man I love choose someone else? Am I okay with having my heart broken on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life? Am I okay with starting over at 32, single and alone, and back to square one? No. I'm not okay with any of that. But am I okay with finally being honest about what I want and what I deserve? Am I okay with refusing to settle for being someone's second choice? Am I okay with walking away from a relationship that was slowly killing me with kindness and careful indifference? Yes. I'm more than okay with that. I'm proud of that. She makes us tea, and we sit on her couch talking until the sun comes up, planning my new life the way we used to plan our futures. When we were teenagers, full of hope and possibility, and the unshakable belief that everything would work out exactly the way it was supposed to. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But for the first time in years, I'm not afraid to find out. My phone starts buzzing again as the morning light filters through her blinds. More calls, more texts, more desperate attempts to undo what can't be undone. But I don't answer. I'm done being available for people who only want me when they're afraid of losing me. Instead, I turn off the phone and make myself breakfast in my sister's kitchen. Scrambled eggs and toast that taste better than anything I've eaten in months. The simple pleasure of feeding myself, of taking care of my own needs without considering anyone else's feelings or preferences, or dietary restrictions. It's a small thing, making breakfast, but it feels like a revolution. Over the next few days, the calls and texts slow down, then stop altogether. I hear through mutual friends that he's moved in with her, that they're trying to make it work. That they look happy together in a way that's both heartbreaking and vindicating. I was right to leave. I was right to trust what I saw, to believe what I felt, to stop making excuses for behavior that spoke louder than any words ever could. I hear that they feel guilty about their happiness, that they wish things could have, been different, that they never meant for anyone to get hurt. But guilt is just the price you pay for getting what you want at someone else's expense. And honestly, I hope they pay it for a while. I hope it keeps them up at night, makes their food taste like ash, forces them to confront the fact that their love story is built on the ruins of mine. Not because I want them to be miserable, but because I want them to understand that choices have consequences. That you can't have everything you want without someone paying the price. But mostly, I hope they're happy. I hope they love each other the way I deserve to be loved, completely, and without reservation. I hope they never take each other for granted the way he took me for granted. I hope they never have to settle or compromise or pretend to feel something they don't feel. Because if they're not happy if all this pain and chaos and heartbreak was for nothing, then what was the point? I move out of the apartment we shared, taking only what's mine and leaving behind everything that belonged to us. The coffee maker we bought together, the couch we spent 3 weekends shopping for, the photo albums full of memories that feel like they belong to someone else now. I pack my clothes and my books and my grandmother's china, and I load it all into a moving truck bound for a new apartment across town. A 1-bedroom with hardwood floors and big windows that face east toward the sunrise. It's smaller than what I'm used to, quieter, lonelier. But it's mine. Every corner, every closet, every decision about what goes where and how to arrange the furniture and what color to paint the walls. For the first time in my adult life, I'm not considering anyone else's opinion about my choices. I'm not compromising or negotiating or finding middle ground. I'm just living for me. The wedding gifts start arriving a few days later. Packages from friends and relatives who haven't heard the news yet, who still think I'm a happily married woman, starting her new life. I should return them. I know. Send them back with polite notes explaining that the wedding was called off. And thank you so much for thinking of us. But we won't be needing the matching towel sets and crystal champagne flutes. After all. Instead, I keep them. Every single one. The KitchenAid mixer in cherry red, the Egyptian cotton sheets, the set of steak knives that cost more than my car payment. I keep them all and use them to build my new life. The one where I cook for myself and make my own bed and cut my own steaks with knives that are sharp enough to do the job right. Some might call it petty. I call it practical. Why should I deprive myself of nice things just because the marriage they were intended for didn't happen? Why should I punish myself for having the courage to walk away from something that was slowly destroying me? The gifts become symbols of possibility instead of reminders of loss. Each one represents a future that's still available to me, still waiting to be claimed. A future where I might host dinner parties for friends who actually want to be there. Where I might have house guests who appreciate my hospitality. Where I might build the kind of life that's worth celebrating. A future where someone might love me enough to stay. Months pass. I settle into routines that belong entirely to me: yoga classes on Tuesday nights, farmers market on Saturday mornings, long walks along the river when I need to think. I make new friends, people who know me as the woman I am now instead of half of a couple I used to be. I take up painting, something I always wanted to try but never had time for when I was busy trying to be the perfect girlfriend. I'm terrible at it, but I love it anyway. There's something liberating about creating something that doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to impress anyone, doesn't have to serve any purpose except to exist. My paintings are abstract and messy and completely without skill, but they're mine. They express feelings I don't have words for, colors and shapes that come from somewhere deep inside me that I never knew existed. I paint the ocean at sunset, the view from that cliff where I sat in my wedding dress crying for everything I thought I'd lost. But in my painting, the ocean isn't sad or lonely or final. It's infinite. It's full of possibility. It's the beginning of something instead of the end. I paint flowers that look nothing like white roses, wild and uncontrolled and beautiful in their imperfection. I paint storms and sunshine and the moment right before dawn, when the sky is caught between darkness and light, not yet decided what it wants to be. I paint myself, or at least I try to. It's harder than painting objects or landscapes because I keep changing, keep becoming someone new every day. The woman in my paintings has stronger shoulders than I remember having, clearer eyes, a steadier hand. She looks like someone who knows what she wants and isn't afraid to ask for it. She looks like someone who would never settle for being second choice. One day, almost a year after the wedding that never happened, I run into them at the grocery store. I'm in the produce section, carefully selecting avocados for the guacamole I'm making for a dinner party. In my apartment, for friends who are coming because they want to spend time with me, not because they feel obligated or guilty or sorry for me. They're in the next aisle over, and I hear his laugh before I see them. The same laugh that used to make my heart skip, that I used to live for, that I thought meant happiness, but really just meant he was getting attention. She says something I can't make out, and he laughs again, and I realize with surprise that it doesn't hurt anymore. Not the sharp, breathless pain I expected, anyway. Just a dull ache, like an old injury that twinges when the weather changes. Manageable, survivable. They see me before I can decide whether to say hello or pretend I didn't notice them. There's an awkward moment where we all freeze. 3 people who used to be entangled in each other's lives trying to figure out how to exist in the same space. Now that we're strangers, he looks good, happier than I remember him being in the last months of our relationship, more relaxed, more present. His arm is around her waist in a way that's possessive but not desperate, comfortable in a way his touch never felt with me. She's glowing, literally glowing with the kind of contentment that comes from being exactly where you want to be with exactly who you want to be with. They look like people in love, really, truly, completely in love, and I'm happy for them. Not the bitter, forced happiness of someone trying to be the bigger person, but genuine gladness that they found each other, that they were brave enough to reach for what they wanted even when it meant hurting someone else. Even when it meant hurting me. We exchange pleasantries. The kind of careful conversation you have with people you used to know intimately, but who are now polite strangers. The weather, work, how we're doing. I tell them about my new apartment, my painting classes, the dinner party I'm hosting tonight. They tell me about their plans to travel, maybe to Europe, maybe to the coast where they can walk on the beach and watch the sunset, without anyone's baggage following them. They don't apologize. I'm glad they don't. Apologies would just be another way of making this about them, about their guilt and their need for absolution. Instead, we just acknowledge what is. 3 people who used to love each other in complicated ways, who survived the explosion of those complications, who are all better off now than we were before. Before I leave, she touches my arm just briefly. Just a gentle pressure that says more than words could. She looks me in the eyes and says, "You look beautiful, really beautiful." And I know she means it. Not beautiful like someone who's put together a good outfit or done her makeup well, but beautiful like someone who's found her way home to herself. Beautiful like someone who's learned the difference between being loved and being settled for. Beautiful like someone who's free. I finish my shopping and drive home to my apartment with the big windows and the paintings that look like freedom. I cook for my friends and we eat and laugh and drink wine and no one mentions the wedding. That didn't happen, or the man who chose someone else, or the year it took me to remember who I was before I started defining myself by who loved me. We talk about books and travel and the terrible movie one of them saw last weekend. We talk about work drama and family gossip and the dreams we still hold close. The ones that keep us up at night with possibility instead of pain. My apartment is filled with warmth, with laughter, with the kind of connection that doesn't demand anything except presence. And as I look around at the faces of my friends, I realize that this messy, imperfect, Beautiful life is what I've been searching for all along. The dinner party stretches late into the night, and when the last guest leaves, I clean up slowly, savoring the quiet. The dishes clink softly in the sink. The wine glasses catch the light from the lamp above, and the air smells faintly of cilantro and lime from the guacamole. I'm alone again, but it doesn't feel lonely. It feels like peace. The next morning, I wake up early, the sunlight streaming through my east-facing windows, painting the room in soft golds and pinks. I make coffee in my cherry red KitchenAid, the one that was supposed to be a wedding gift but is now just mine. I sit at my small kitchen table, sketchbook open in front of me, and start drawing. Not painting this time, just sketching lines and curves that might become something or might just stay as they are. Half-formed and full of potential. I think about the past year as I draw. About how walking away from that altar was the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the bravest. About how letting go of him and the idea of us was like cutting off a limb. Painful and disorienting, but necessary for survival. About how I've spent every day since then learning how to be whole on my own. Not as half of a couple or a shadow in someone else's story, but as me, just me. I think about her, too. About the woman who didn't mean to break my world apart, but did anyway. Not because she was cruel or selfish, but because love doesn't follow rules or respect boundaries. I think about how she's probably waking up next to him right now. Maybe in a bed that smells like his cologne. Maybe with his arm draped over her like it used to be draped over me. And I'm surprised to find that the thought doesn't sting anymore. It's just a fact. Like the sky being blue or the ocean being deep. They're together, and I'm here. And both of those things can be true without one diminishing the other. My phone buzzes on the table, pulling me out of my thoughts. It's a text from my sister, checking in like she does every few days now. Making sure I'm still okay, still standing. She's planning a girls' trip next month. Somewhere warm with beaches and cocktails and no expectations. She wants me to come, says it'll be good for my soul. I smile and text back that I'm in, already imagining the feel of sand between my toes and the sound of waves that don't carry memories of heartbreak. As I put the phone down, I notice a notification from an art gallery downtown. A local artist collective is hosting an open call for submissions, looking for new voices, new perspectives, new stories told through paint and canvas. I hesitate for only a moment before opening my laptop and drafting an email. I attach photos of my paintings, the ocean, the flowers, the storms, the woman with the strong shoulders and clear eyes. I don't know if they're good enough, but I know they're mine, and that's enough for now. I hit send and close the laptop, feeling a flutter of something I haven't felt in a long time. Excitement. Not the kind that comes from someone else's approval or affection, but the kind that comes from taking a risk on yourself, from believing that you have something worth sharing, even if it's messy, even if it's imperfect, even if no one else sees it the way you do. The rest of the day unfolds slowly, deliberately, the way I've learned to live now. I go to the farmer's market and buy fresh tomatoes for a salad I'll make later. I stop by the bookstore and pick up a novel I've been wanting to read. One with a cover that promises adventure and a heroine who doesn't need saving. I take a long walk along the river, watching the water catch the light and thinking about how it keeps moving, always moving, no matter what gets in its way. By the time I get home, the sun is setting again, painting the sky in those same shades of pink and gold that once felt like an ending but now feel like a promise. I stand at my window, looking out at the city that's become my home in a way it never was when I was sharing it with him. This is my place now, my space, my story. I think about the woman I was a year ago, standing at that altar, surrounded by white roses and broken promises. I think about how she thought love was something you earned, something you had to beg for, something you could lose if you weren't perfect enough. I think about how she didn't know that love starts with yourself, that you can't give it or receive it until you learn to stand in your own worth. I'm not that woman anymore. I'm someone new, someone who's learning to choose herself every single day, who's building a life that doesn't depend on someone else's validation. I'm someone who paints and laughs and plans trips with her sister and submits her art to galleries without knowing if it's good enough, but doing it anyway. I'm someone who's free. And as the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky, I realize that I'm not just okay with that. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the woman I've become, the one who walked away from a love that wasn't enough, who chose herself over settling, who found a way to turn heartbreak into possibility.